Right now, there are 10 quintillion insects on Earth. That's a 10 with 19 zeros behind it. For every one human alive, there are roughly 1.4 billion insects. They're in your walls, your garden, your food, your air, right now, as you sit there. And every single one of them is completely indifferent to you. Now change that one thing. We've always been the ones declaring war on insects, pesticides, fumigation, fly swatters, raid cans. We act like we're winning. We're not winning. We're barely maintaining a ceasefire. And the only reason that ceasefire holds is because insects haven't collectively decided we're worth the focused attention. Think about what that means. The most numerically dominant life form on this planet, the one that outweighs all human beings combined, is tolerating us. Not fearing us, not respecting us, tolerating us. And that tolerance is the only thing standing between a normal Tuesday and what we're about to walk through. Here's what people get wrong about insect behavior. They think of insects as individuals. One ant, one bee, one cockroach. That's not how eusocial insects work. An ant colony isn't a group of ants. It's a single organism distributed across thousands of bodies. No central brain, no plan, no single decision maker, just chemical signals, pheromones, information moving through the colony the way electricity moves through a circuit. You step on an ant near a fire ant mound. The crushed ant releases an alarm pheromone. Within seconds, not minutes, seconds, the colony mobilizes. Not because a leader decided to respond, because the chemical signal said, disruption, react. Now think about what happens when that signal doesn't stop at the colony edge. Here's the small shift. A construction site, suburban sprawl pushing into established fire ant territory, heavy machinery, ground disruption, pesticide application across a wide area. The alarm response triggers across multiple colonies simultaneously. The chemical signal bleeds into adjacent territory. The next colony picks it up, not as a message, not as a command, just as ambient chemical pressure. Something is disrupting. React. That colony's response bleeds into the next, and the next. A chain reaction not of intelligence, not of coordination, not of anything resembling a plan, just irritation at scale. And scale is where everything changes. Let's start personal, because before this becomes a systemic problem, it becomes your problem. One cockroach. That's all it takes right now. One cockroach appears on your kitchen counter at 2 a.m. and a fully grown adult human being, tool-using, fire-controlling, civilization-building, is standing on a chair. Now turn the light on, and the ceiling is moving. Not one cockroach, hundreds, packed together, covering every surface in the upper half of the room. And these aren't crawling. These are the flying ones. You go to the kitchen for a glass of water. You stand in the hallway for a very long time, thinking about how thirsty you are, deciding it doesn't matter. Now scale that out of the kitchen, because cockroaches are just the beginning of the personal horror. Hornets and wasps already kill more people annually than sharks, more than bears, more than wolves. Every dramatic predator humans fear gets outscored by hornets, and hornets are already aggressive, already territorial, already willing to chase a threat a significant distance from the nest. Now the nest isn't defending itself, it's hunting. The distinction matters. Defense stops when the threat retreats. Hunting doesn't stop. Africanized honeybees, the so-called killer bees, already pursue threats up to a quarter mile from the hive. a quarter mile. You can't outrun that. Now every hive in the region is doing it, not to protect the hive, just because the chemical signal says disruption. And bullet ants. A single bullet ant sting is rated the most painful insect sting known to science. People who've experienced it describe it as being shot, hence the name. A single ant, one sting. Now imagine you can't take a step outside without walking through a column of them. Driver ants. Colonies of up to 20 million individuals already consume everything in their path, already move as a single flowing mass that redirects around obstacles and overwhelms anything that can't escape. There are documented cases of driver ant columns killing tethered livestock, killing them, not biting them repeatedly until they gave up, overwhelming them. Now that column isn't following a random foraging path. The chemical signal pushed it toward where the disruption came from, toward the neighborhood, toward the street, toward the front door. You can seal the windows, you can seal the doors. But insects don't need doors. They need a gap the width of a credit card. And your house has hundreds of those. Now push past the personal scale. Because what happens to you in your kitchen is simultaneously happening to the systems your life depends on. Termites first. Termites already cause approximately $5 billion in structural damage annually, in the United States alone, every year, without being particularly focused about it. They're not targeting anyone. Now they're focused, not smarter, just chemically amplified toward human structures. The alarm signals spreading outward hits termite colonies in urban and suburban zones. Disruption. React. And termites react by doing what they always do. Eating. Faster. More colonies. More coordinated pressure. A standard home has significant termite damage in months under normal conditions. Under these conditions, weeks. Not the cosmetic kind of damage, the load-bearing kind. You're driving to work. Third day of what the news is calling an unusual pest activity surge. The windshield starts accumulating, not rain. You turn the wipers on, it smears. You slow down. The car behind you slows down too, then stops. You look left. You look right. Every car on the road has stopped. Everyone is looking at their windshields. The accumulation isn't slowing down. You turn the wipers on again. It doesn't help. You sit in your car, windows up, not going anywhere. Now the food supply. A single locust swarm, one swarm, can consume 200 million kilograms of vegetation in a single day. In 2020, East Africa experienced locust swarms described as the worst in 70 years. They crossed borders. They crossed oceans. A swarm the size of a major city moving across the landscape, consuming everything at ground level. Now that swarm isn't following wind patterns and vegetation gradients. The chemical signal is pointing it at agricultural zones, not one field. Every field in a 200-mile radius, in 4 days. The math on that isn't a bad harvest. The math on that is no harvest. And the grocery store doesn't tell you immediately. The first week, the shelves look normal. Second week, certain produce starts getting sparse. By week 3, the fresh food section is mostly empty. And it's not panic buying this time. The food just isn't coming because the crops are gone, and the trucks that would have brought food are having their own problems, because the roads have their own situation, because the drivers won't get out of the cab, because getting out of the cab means standing in it. Mosquitoes and flies don't need to become more aggressive to become catastrophic. They just need more reach. Mosquitoes already transmit malaria, dengue fever, yellow fever, West Nile virus, Zika. Right now, disease control and mosquito management programs keep transmission rates manageable in most developed regions. Those programs require people outside operating equipment, requires supply chains delivering pesticide, requires infrastructure functioning normally. Now all of those are compromised, and mosquito populations, with no suppression, with human activity disrupting their territory and triggering escalated behavior, expand into every standing water source in every urban environment. The diseases aren't new. The transmission rate is just no longer managed. That's a different kind of emergency than anything a government has a clean protocol for. The physical damage is one thing, but what happens inside human minds is another. The first week, people treat it like a bad pest season. They buy extra bug spray. They call exterminators. The exterminators are overwhelmed. The second week, hardware stores run out of pesticide. People start improvising. The third week, people stop going outside after dusk. Not because someone told them to, because every single time they did, it wasn't worth it. You're trying to sleep. It's been 12 days. The window is sealed. You checked it 3 times. But the sound outside has changed. It's not traffic, not wind, not anything you have a word for. A frequency. Low, constant, layered. Like the air itself is vibrating at a new pitch. You lie there listening to it. It doesn't get louder, it doesn't get softer, it just stays. Constant. And somewhere around 3 a.m., you realize you've been lying completely still for 2 hours, listening to insects breathe. Here's what the psychology textbooks don't have a clean category for. An enemy with no face. Humans are wired to deal with threats that have a location, a source, a leader, a front line. We know how to organize against those. We've done it for all of history. But there is no front line here. There is no headquarters, no leader to negotiate with, no territory to take, no single point of failure to strike, just a chemical signal, spreading outward from everywhere. And you cannot negotiate with a pheromone. Here's the irony nobody wants to say. We did this partly to ourselves. 70 years of industrial pesticide use hasn't eliminated insect populations. It's produced resistant ones. The insects that survived our chemical war bred, passed on resistance, created strains that shrug off what used to work. We've been running an involuntary selective breeding program for the most chemically resilient insects possible. And then there's the paradox underneath all of it. Insects pollinate approximately 75% of the world's food crops. The same insects now chemically amplified against human activity are the same insects the food supply depends on to function. Mutual destruction isn't a metaphor here. It's the actual mechanism. The war and the food system are the same system. And disrupting one disrupts the other. What does a government do? Seriously, think about it. Every military response framework assumes an enemy with territory. With infrastructure you can target. With communication systems you can disrupt. With leadership you can remove. Insects have none of those. You can't sanction a fire ant colony. You can't negotiate a ceasefire with a locust swarm. You can't bomb a pheromone signal. The most powerful militaries on Earth have no protocol for this. The closest option is large-scale pesticide deployment, which accelerates resistance, which further collapses pollination, which further collapses the food supply. And fire. Burning works. Humans burning things at the scale required creates its own cascade of problems that compounds everything else already in motion. There is no clean solution. There is no single action that fixes this. There's just management. Constant, exhausting, increasingly ineffective management of something that doesn't need to win. It just needs to persist. Not one ant, not one colony. Every fire ant colony in the American South simultaneously irritated. That's an estimated 700 billion ants, all receiving the same ambient chemical pressure, all reacting the way fire ants react. Not coordinated, not planned, just the same direction, at the same time, for the same chemical reason. That's not an army. That's something worse than an army. An army has a general. This has momentum. We've been at war with insects our entire existence. We just never called it that, because we assumed we were winning. We weren't winning. We were ahead, temporarily, locally, by chemical margin. And that margin has been shrinking for 70 years. 10 quintillion insects, already organized, already chemical, already operating as superorganisms that don't need a leader to mobilize. Already in your walls, your food, your air, the gap under your door. The only thing standing between a normal Tuesday and every single thing we just walked through is insect indifference. And indifference is not the same as peace. It never was. We just got comfortable enough to forget the difference.